Am I? Am I in Cloudsdale? In the past? Not just that, but there's something else that's different. I can't quite put my hoof on it though. Well, whatever. I guess now is as good a time as any to finally start talking about the Cutie Remarks alternate timelines. Now, let's talk about the Season 5 finale, the Cutie Remark. More specifically, let's take a look at each of the various alternate timelines presented in this finale and figure out just how each of them came to be. I've seen many others simply chalk it all up to the butterfly effect and leave it at that, but I'm going to try and go into it a bit more detail than that. Diving right in, let's start with the first alternate timeline, the King Sombra timeline. In order for this timeline to make sense, we have to assume that Nightmare Moon, Discord, and Queen Chrysalis were all defeated. After all, Princess Celestia is still in power and leading the charge against King Sombra. Well, what's different here? Let's focus on the main 6 and see how things worked out here compared to the main timeline. First of all, it's made pretty clear that Applejack eventually went back to Sweet Apple Acres and got her cutie mark. We only see Fluttershy and Rarity for a brief moment and their cutie marks have been covered up, but I think based on the task they were assigned, it's safe to assume that they got their respective cutie marks as well. Let's just say that the only thing stopping the Sonic Rain Boom actually did was make the main 6 get their cutie marks later and at different times. Out of the main 6, only Applejack and Rarity actually grew up in Ponyville, so it makes sense that Applejack would only recognize Rarity's name even if one of the others was living in Ponyville. Pinkie Pie knows every single pony in Ponyville because she's friends with every pony, so by that logic, Pinkie Pie never moved to Ponyville. Neither did Twilight, by the way. Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy, on the other hand, are a different story. First of all, why did Rainbow Dash move to Ponyville in the first place? To be with her friend Fluttershy? Because there was a job opening there? As long as we don't know the reason, we can't say for sure whether or not she moved to Ponyville in this new timeline. As for Fluttershy, it's still plausible that the memory of the animals alone would convince her to try moving to Ponyville after eventually getting her cutie mark. As for why Applejack doesn't recognize her name, come on, Fluttershy's practically living like a hermit, and without Pinkie Pie there, I doubt any pony would know her name. So we have Pinkie Pie fulfilling her destiny of making other ponies smile somewhere else in Equestria. We have Twilight Sparkle still living in Canterlot, and we have the other 4 living in Ponyville. So what happened when Nightmare Moon returned? Well, most likely without any potential element bearers, Celestia would have to use the elements of harmony herself to banish her sister back to the moon. Discord was never released because the elements were still with Celestia and thus the connection was never broken. Either that or Celestia used the elements of harmony again.
I thought the spell we cast would keep them contained forever. But since Luna and I are no longer connected to the elements, the spell has been broken.
When the time came, Celestia herself returned the elements back to the Tree of Harmony, because there was no personal student to troll. This brings us to Queen Chrysalis. What about her? Well, one thing you have to remember is that Twilight Sparkle never moved to Ponyville. I made an episode earlier about how Twilight Sparkle Captain Kirk the Impossible entrance exam, and how even had she failed the exam, she would have been accepted anyway as an ordinary student. Well, even if you don't subscribe to that particular theory, she's still most likely to still be in Canterlot, which meant she would have met the fake Princess Cadance sooner, which meant she would have suspected and accused Chrysalis earlier, which meant almost everything that happened in a Canterlot wedding happened sooner in the timeline. How does this change things? Well, the only reason why Chrysalis defeated Celestia was because she was stealing the love that Shining Armor had for Cadance. So if Twilight found and freed Cadance sooner and revealed Chrysalis as an imposter sooner, then this particular little duel would have ended very differently. After that, King Sombra returns to power, and without Spike there, he succeeded in taking over the Crystal Empire. As for Tirek, without Discord's help, he likely didn't get very far. Maybe he tried to sap King Sombra and lost or something, I don't know. So, moving on, the Queen Chrysalis timeline. Let's take a moment to think about what exactly is different here. Well, Fluttershy became friends with the bullies. This may not seem like much, but think about this for a moment. What else would that change? For one thing, she never would have dropped down near Ponyville where she met all those animals. She most likely got her cutie mark as the animal expert, but under very different circumstances. Without that memory of those little woodland creatures, she would have absolutely no reason to move to Ponyville. So, let's just move her and Rainbow Dash over to Cloudsdale. But what does this mean exactly? Remember the Season 1 episode Dragonshy? You know, the one with the red dragon whose snores could have covered all of Equestria with smoke? Yeah, pretty big deal. In the original timeline, Celestia delegated that task to Twilight because she was closer, I guess? In the other timelines, however, Celestia or some pony she sent went to deal with that little problem. For whatever reason, maybe because of her expertise with animals, Fluttershy got roped into this mission as well. So, Dragonshy still happened, just with a different set of ponies. In the Chrysalis timeline, however, Fluttershy doesn't live in Ponyville, and therefore would not have been recruited at all. Without her help, the ponies sent to deal with the dragon probably didn't do so well. In fact, Celestia herself might have had to step in. In other words, Celestia spent time away from Canterlot, and that's when Chrysalis made her move. With Celestia gone, Twilight Sparkle herself may have had attempted to take on Chrysalis on her own, and lost. It's also possible that because Chrysalis didn't have enough time to sap away all of Shining Armor's strength, she took him and Cadance more seriously as a threat and dealt with them directly. By the time Celestia got back to Canterlot, it was already too late. Maybe she was ambushed. Maybe she was tired after dealing with the dragon. Whatever the reason, Chrysalis beat her. Oh, one more thing about Discord Seeds. Remember, in this new Chrysalis timeline, there would be a whole bunch of ponies living in the Everfree Forest with Zecora. They would be like her family. Her responsibility. In the original timeline, when the Everfree Forest went wild, Zecora just packed her things and left. After all, it was just her living there, right? In the Chrysalis timeline, however, things are a bit different. The Everfree Forest would be the only place in Equestria safe from the changelings. Zecora would have been extra motivated to ensure that her family still had a place to call home. She would have the right magical expertise to journey to the abandoned castle of the two sisters, retrieve the elements of harmony, and return them to the Tree of Harmony. That's why Discord Seeds are no longer affecting the Everfree Forest in this timeline. Finally, we have the most interesting butterfly effect of them all, the Nightmare Moon timeline. In the previous two timelines, Celestia defeated her sister again using the elements of harmony. What's different this time? One pony is different this time, and her name is Rainbow Dash, aka the Queen Maker. In this new timeline, Rainbow Dash got distracted by the fight between Twilight and Starlight. In other words, a fight between an alicorn and a non-alicorn. She saw with her own two eyes a non-alicorn going hoof to hoof against an alicorn. The more important thing, though, is what happened afterwards. Is it possible she became friends with those two bullies? They just saw something amazing. Maybe they bonded over that one single event. If that's true and they actually became friends, then those two bullies could have been a bad influence on Rainbow Dash. This new Rainbow Dash, when presented with the opportunity to join the Shadow Bolts. In this timeline, she joined them. Having Rainbow Dash on her side could have been enough to tip the balance in Nightmare Moon's favor and allowed her to achieve victory against Celestia. Now, if banishing Luna to the moon wasn't enough to break the connection to the elements of harmony, then banishing Celestia to the moon shouldn't be enough either. Since the elements are still technically connected to the two sisters, Discord was never released. The elements, however, are still hidden within the castle of the two sisters, right underneath Nightmare Moon's very nose. Due to Rainbow Dash's interference, Celestia never reached the elements in time to defeat Nightmare Moon. Since the elements remain hidden, Discord seeds took root and caused the Everfree Forest to expand and take over all of Equestria. The majority of Equestria's population were taken out by Everfree Forest's most dangerous monsters while the surviving ponies holed up in Nightmare Moon's castle. King Sombra returned, took one look at Equestria's current state, and decided not to have anything to do with that. Seriously, why do so many people think that this timeline's better than the original? The Everfree Forest has expanded to the point where any pony outside could get attacked by timberwolves at any moment. Also, no, they can't live in the wild like in the Chrysalis timeline. Discord seeds caused the forest to become too wild even for Zecora, and the only way to fix that problem is hidden away in Nightmare Moon's castle. Sure, Zecora may have tried to sneak into Nightmare Moon's castle, but I doubt she'd get very far. So this right here? This is most likely the entirety of Equestria's population. Good job, Nightmare Moon. Good job. So, moving on, the Tirek timeline. What's different here? Well, actually this timeline is most similar to the first one, the King Sombra timeline. The difference is that Rainbow Dash was tripped instead of frozen in place with magic. Why should that make a difference? Well, if she were frozen in place, she'd have no real idea as to what was going on. The culprit would most likely have to have been a unicorn, but they're in Cloudsdale. No pony would believe her even if she tried to explain how she lost that race. Heck, I doubt she'd even believe herself and may eventually chalk it up to her nerves getting the best of her. Now, getting tripped by a Pegasus on the other hand, that's actually believable. Rainbow Dash would know for sure that she was cheated out of her victory. Who really knows just how different she became from General Rainbow Dash because of this? Whatever the case, she and her psyche is the key here to the army's strength and to Tirek's success. If this incident made her weaker, then the army became weaker overall, allowing Tirek the opportunity to pick them off one by one. If she became stronger, on the other hand, then the army became stronger, and King Sombra would be all the more tempted to accept Tirek's help. Then there's the Discord timeline. What happened here is that Rainbow Dash accidentally got zapped by Twilight. Notice, however, that this happened right after Rainbow Dash stuck up for Fluttershy. Now, think about this for a moment here. Which pony would be most likely to help out Rainbow Dash in this situation? The answer is Fluttershy. Fluttershy would have helped Rainbow Dash. Anyways, in this timeline, these two definitely bonded and became friends. Maybe they stayed in Cloudsdale. Maybe Rainbow Dash convinced Fluttershy to move to Ponyville with her. Personally, I think it's the latter. There's only two reasons why Fluttershy would move to Ponyville in the first place. One, because she remembered her animal friends, or two, because of her friendship with Rainbow Dash. This friendship between these two Pegasi could have actually been stronger than during Season 1 of the original timeline. Rainbow Dash would have more respect for Fluttershy and value her opinion a lot more. How does this help? Well, what if when Nightmare Moon returned, these two friends stepped in and acted as a mediator between Celestia and Luna? That's right, I'm proposing that Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy were able to step in and prevent either side from outright winning. Maybe Celestia and Luna actually mended their relationship without any need for the elements of harmony. Maybe Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy were able to convince Celestia not to banish Luna to the moon and force a stalemate between the two sisters. In either case, Celestia could have been convinced of Luna's redemption enough to attempt another redemption, namely, the redemption of Discord himself.
Now where is Fluttershy? I believe she may know best how to begin reforming Discord.
Fluttershy? Really?
Yeah, it didn't exactly work out in this case though. Lastly, we have the Flim Flam Brothers timeline. Okay, I think I can explain this one. I think. Anyways, this timeline would be most like the Queen Chrysalis timeline. The only difference is that Fluttershy probably didn't become long-term friends with the Bowleys. I very much doubt Starlight would stick around and keep secretly helping out Fluttershy with her flight lessons. So, what does this mean? It means that Fluttershy most likely left Cloudsdale, but not necessarily to Ponyville. If anything, I would place her in Canterlot because of the Garden of Animals. She probably got a job there as a groundskeeper or something, and when the time came, she got recruited into dealing with the Red Dragon from Dragonshy. Her presence in Canterlot could also have another effect. In the King Sombra timeline, the invasion of the changelings happened earlier. If the Flim Flam Brothers were there as well, maybe they got caught up in the battle that happened there? In this Flim Flam Brothers timeline, however, Fluttershy may have inadvertently saved them and allowed them to escape in the aftermath. These two brothers then took over Sweet Apple Acres, then used their profits to invest in the war effort against King Sombra. As a result, this. Last but not least, we have the Apocalypse timeline. Well, in this one, Rainbow Dash was not simply frozen in place. This time she was outright zapped by Starlight. For all we know, that attack could have outright injured Rainbow Dash. Again, this affects Rainbow Dash's psyche and her future performance as leader of Celestia's army. What does this mean? Depending on Rainbow Dash's performance in the war against King Sombra, either one side could have become desperate enough to take drastic measures to win the war. Maybe Celestia was captured? Maybe King Sombra was losing? Whatever the case, some pony had the bright idea of recruiting not only Tirek, but also Discord and Nightmare Moon. Heck, maybe one side decided to form an alliance with the remnants of Chrysalis' army. The results were not pretty at all. Interesting how in most of these timelines, it's Rainbow Dash who has the most influence in the outcomes of each timeline. In one timeline, she's the leader of Celestia's army. In another, she sided with Nightmare Moon and helped her win. In yet another, she and Fluttershy stepped in and reunited the two Alicorn sisters. Oh, and in the final timeline, she may or may not have doomed all of Equestria. So, what do you think? Could Rainbow Dash truly be the Queenmaker in all of these alternate timelines? Did Fluttershy's role in Dragonshy actually have much farther reaching consequences than we initially thought? Leave your comments below and let me know. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Now, how do I get back to my own time? Oh, here we go.